It seems to me that a lot of learning and emotional intelligence is what's called osmotic. It's because you're a model and people absorb it. Kids absorb it. Kids look to adults for how to behave. So you're teaching lessons for better or for worse in emotional intelligence all the time you're with a kid. And the more time you spend together, the better, if the lessons are good ones.
Wow. I have two last questions for these conversations. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
And one question is about thinking, because Vivian and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think also, because we see there's so many noises these days that are affecting our ability to think. So the question for you, Daniel, is how have you been growing your ability to think?
I try to resist my phone. Our phones are our best friends and our worst enemies for thinking. The reason being, there's a direct relationship between how emotionally unregulated you are and poor thinking, or being calm and clear, managing your upsetting emotions. That helps you think the most clearly. And our phones have all of our distractions. Everything that you like to see, everything you like to hear is there in your phone in an instant. So being able to resist, to not pick up that phone and look at all the things that distract you, but keep your mind and your focus on the task at hand, I think that's the most important thing for thinking well.
There will be the one also because of love telling you not to pursue those. So how do you navigate those words, those voices, and continue to find strength to pursue the thing that you find convenient for you to do so?
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of people provide their feedback from their perspective. They're not doing it to and there's also things that you need to know about yourself so that you put yourself in a position to have success. So for example, when I decided to climb Mount Everest, my mom was not my first call. There's no way my mom was going to be excited for me, right? Like no way. And so my first call was to a coach. And then that coach introduced me to people that climbed Everest. And then when I met those people for lunch or went out and trained with them, I'm like, okay, they're not that different than me. I can be just like them. And so I built my skills around that. And so that when I did go tell my mom, hey, I'm going to climb Everest, there was no space for her to knock that goal down because I was so solid in who I was and how I was going to do it. And I could remember when I first said, oh, do I want to climb Everest? That seems big and scary. And like, who does that? And I don't know anybody. And look at the movies and all that kind of stuff. Like, I needed to recognize that those were natural emotions my mom was going to have. She didn't get to go train with people that had climbed Everest. She didn't get to have lunch with people that climbed Everest and spilled ketchup on their shirt, right? Like, they're human. If they spilled ketchup, I spilled ketchup. We're the same, right? And so for me, I had built enough confidence that she could borrow my confidence and be like, okay, you're going to do this. You researched it. You positioned yourself to have success. You hired coaches. You do all these things that I don't even know. I have more confidence now because I'm borrowing it from you. And so I think a lot of times, like, people are going to say, like, how did she do that? Or why did she do that? Or that's silly, or you shouldn't. I shouldn't because they're not trained, right? Like, they shouldn't, right? Of course you shouldn't. So they're just using me as a mirror for them. They're not using me as like telling me what to do. They're like explaining, man, I wouldn't do that based on my experience and what I know and what I understand. So you shouldn't. Well, you're not me. And so I respect that you have those opinions and feelings and thoughts, but I don't. And you just have to like stay strong enough in who you are and limit your exposure, right? Like, I couldn't talk to people that are going against me all day long. I might be like, okay, I'm going to go train with my Everest people that have done this for 6 hours to fill up my tank and to let me feel good, so that if I go to a soccer game and 5 moms telling me I'm crazy, well, I have enough in my tank to be like, okay, that's fine. You can think that, but I'm good because I filled up my tank before I went into that environment, and I limit my exposure to those kind of comments.
Kind of the rule that I really always say, kind of whether it's about thinking or about other things, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what's important to you. So kind of if you say my goal is to do X and Y, your calendar does not show that. It's not important to you. You just talk about it. And so if your goal is to improve your thinking and your knowledge, show it when you do that in your life. It takes time to get better at that. Don't care what it is, whether you want to get better in sports, whether you want to get better in science, thinking, get better learning about other people. It needs to be time that you spend. Time is the most precious good for everything.
Wow, wow. How have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Yeah, so I think I am a very curious person. I'm always asking, even I get trouble at home, asking my wife, why are you doing it that way? So it's sort of like, I'm always like curious. Like I always want to think. I always want to do new things. I always want to. So I think that has kept me going, like, being able to think about how do I teach this topic or how do I build this product? Those things, I think it comes from the curiosity factor plus the hunger for knowledge. I want to know more about this. And then I like doing things. I don't want to talk, I don't like talking and in meetings a lot. I just want to get my hands on and do something, build something and see how it works. Prototype it. I do a lot of prototyping myself. So that's the advice I give the young people. Just prototype your idea because you have a lot of tools to do it. And then if you want to make it a product, bring a team and then think about how to get that, build a market and monetize it and all the other things. Right? Yeah. So yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. The last question is about the platform that we are building at the moment called Hello Newness, because we want to help people to experience newness and enjoy embracing it. So your life is like you exploring newness every like different part of your life. You always seek for newness and creating that, right? So through that journey of wisdom, what would be the advice you give people to have the confidence to explore newness inside of them and outside of them for a better self and to create something better for the community?
Yeah, my advice is don't be afraid to fail because you're going to fail. I mean, I think I have maybe 4 ideas that were successful, but I probably pursued like 30 ideas. And so I failed 26 times, but I succeeded 4 times. So don't be afraid to pursue an idea and fail and learn from it and, start to pursue a new idea. So I think that's the advice I give anyone, because even when you fail, in fact, the lessons you learn when you fail is more important than lessons you learn when you succeed. It's because it gives you and the ability to not get discouraged when you fail. Like if you think, I'm going to build this product, I love this product, and I'm going to give it to the world and see how they like it, and nobody likes it. And suddenly you feel like, why don't they see it, right? So maybe it's not the time for the product. But if you analyze it and say, maybe I went to the wrong people, and you try, but you fail, you still fail. Mm-hmm. And you give up on, you say, okay, I learned a good set of lessons and let's move on. In fact, I was in a panel at the Association for Computing Machinery panel, that the panel, the title of the panel was, we thought that was a good idea at the time, right? So everybody talked about all the ideas that failed, some idea that failed. Academics don't talk about these things, we don't want to talk about our failures, right? Uh-huh. But this was a panel where we say, we're not afraid to say that we failed, because we failed. I failed 26 times, but I succeeded 4 times. That's okay. That's a good success rate for me. But the 26 times I failed, I learned so many lessons that are better than the ones I learned from succeeding. And so that's a great lesson. So, okay.
Wow. Wow. So the question for you tonight is, Mary, have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
I would say there's probably four things, but the first is put your phone down, right? Mm-hmm. put your phone away. The second thing that I find is going for long walks. And even if I'm listening to a podcast to kind of spur my thinking, I find some of my best ideas come from those walks when I'm kind of, you're free. And neuroscience says that, right? They call it vacation brain. When you kind of take yourself out of your familiar surroundings, sometimes we're able to think. I think the third is to read broadly, right? Find things that you're interested in, but read fiction, read nonfiction, read science fiction, read about the arts, read biographies. So just stretch our ability to think in different ways, to imagine through fiction, to learn through nonfiction, to model through biography. So I think to read broadly. I also, because I'm not very good at keeping my focus, so the multitasking is something I'm still working on, right? To kind of just, I know when I'm really passionate about something because I'm in the flow. But the other thing that I would offer is to figure out other creative ventures that help you think about things in a different way. So when COVID hit, I started taking collaging classes and just doing collaging. And there's nothing more restful than cutting and pasting paper, right? so that collaging. So find other creative outlets that help you to think differently, right? Mm-hmm. To help you to see things from different perspective. Go walk around a museum, something that just challenges our stereotypes or our perceptions.
Well, I think in every one of those moments for me, I can now look back, perhaps through my wisdom gear, and see all of the little things I was doing every day to prepare for that moment.
Wow.
So I'll give you an example, because a lot of young students come to me. We're right next door to the University of Michigan, and a lot of students hear about me. They reach out. They want to come talk to me. They want somewhat ask the same kinds of questions you're asking, but they're in their early 20s at that point. And they ask me often, what advice do you have for me as I go out into the work world? And I tell them that the most important thing I learned to do when I got my first jobs is to do this, to raise my hand and volunteer for things. And I say, let me tell you how that worked for me. And part of it was, I think in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to have my own business. That was just a kind of a bucket list goal for me. And so So I said, you know, I was a programmer. I was a technical person. I had studied computer science at the University of Michigan. So I knew that the value I was being paid for was to create software with my fingers and my brain. You know, that was how I produced value. But if I wanted to grow, I needed to have different experiences. It couldn't just be technical experiences. So when the salesperson came into the room of engineers and said, hey, I'm going on a customer visit. I need an engineer to come with me to explain our products to our potential clients. I raised my hand and I said, I'll go. When the HR director said, hey, we're planning the holiday party for our team, and I need a few people to help me plan it and execute it. And I said, I can help with that. Wow. When the manufacturing team that was building the little electronic products that we were shipping said, hey, we're really behind on shipments. We need a few extra hands back in manufacturing to help build the products. I said, I can help with that. When somebody said, hey, we're going to a trade show in Las Vegas, we need somebody to help build the booth, man the booth, talk to potential customers, I can help with that. And I would say that all of those in the moment learning opportunities were done minute by minute, day by day, week by week, year by year, so that when later those really big moments happened, I had all of this body of experience, knowledge, and wisdom built up from those other moments where I raised my hand that, you know, it often, you know, there is a phrase that says fortune favors the prepared mind. And, you know, and I think, you know, my instinct was I wanted to have those other kinds of experiences. I wasn't, because I think that a lot of times people are like, no, you just wait. And you wait till the opportunity comes and it will be handed to you. And I've just never seen that happen. It's always based on the minute day by day things you do to prepare yourself for those big moments.
Wow.
And again, I think reading books is another big part of that too.
You know, it's never been my intention to create a trend.
Oh.
That was never the intention. That's maybe the luck part. And I don't know if it's even a skill, because, you know, I've been paying attention to the success rhetoric, right? And I always heard you have to have a vision for what you want to be, for what you want to do. I mean, even Oprah says that. But I got to tell you, I could never have envisioned what I've been able to do. Like, I didn't even have a context for it. So how could I have envisioned it? So I think that advice, I don't think, it's not that it's wrong, it's just that it's not the only way. I think if you can envision something, great, go for it. But I never could, so my only option was really to just keep moving toward the heat. Like, if I would see something and I would be like, oh, wow, that is interesting. Let's go check that out. Let's go check that out. And then, and I would get there and I would see everything and I'd be like, oh, what's the next? Oh, okay, look at that. Okay, that's interesting. Let's move toward that. So I think it's more just the guts to just keep moving toward what's interesting. You know, and then if it turns out, oh, you get there and it's like, it's not that interesting. Go look for something else, you know? And it was also a remedy to the fact that once I really know what I'm doing, I get bored. So I have to keep doing stuff where I'm not really quite sure what I'm doing.
Wow.
You know, and get around people who do know what they're doing so I can learn from them.
Wow.
So I know I risk sounding like I'm actually just a dilettante. So what makes me not that? I think it's another trait where I crave mastery. Like whatever I'm going to do that I enjoy, I'm going to get really good at it. I'm just going to get as good as I possibly can. You know?
Yes.
If it's not that interesting, yeah, you know, I'm okay being okay. But, you know, there's a thing in the U.S. Constitution that talks about the pursuit of happiness. I don't expect you to be familiar with it. You know, why would you? Well, you spent some time in the U.S., so you probably heard it, right?
Yes.
And it struck me when I was studying neuroscience that not everyone, but many people are really, all they want is the opportunity to be in pursuit of whatever it is. And I feel like we've over-indexed, Americans have over-indexed on the word happiness. And the really important word in there is pursuit.
I usually try to analyze everything that's in my life on a continuous basis, and I rank and rate whether or not it helps me accomplish the objectives that I've set out for myself given that time period, right? Whether it's a year, whether it's a short period of time, and I do say no a lot. And having the maturity and the ability to do that came through age, it came through wisdom, but it also came through recognizing that I could waste a lot of time doing things that really wouldn't have much impact. And that impact could be on behalf of my family, or that impact could be on behalf of my community, or on behalf of my job. But for me, ranking and rating and getting rid of things, I get rid of stuff. I go, nope, that's taking up too much time and it's not giving me what I need in order to do the things that I know are most important for me to be doing right now.
I wanted you to give an example of rank and rate, because that's important for us to analyze the things that we've been doing every day or about to be doing, so that we can give the number for that, and then we define whether or not that number is worth the investment of our times, right, in terms of the end result. So in your analyzations, how you process that ranking and rating before you make a decision?
Well, you know, I get asked to serve on a lot of different boards. And when I'm asked to serve on boards, both corporate boards, nonprofit boards, philanthropic boards, or government boards, I usually look to see whether or not, A, I think I have a unique ability to provide value to that board. B, will the environment in which I'm operating allow me to provide the value that I can provide, right? Is it even going to let me provide that value? And C, how much time commitment is it going to take for me in order to provide that value? When I do those three things, I can usually analyze whether or not something is the right fit for me.
How do you define wisdom in your life?
It's such an interesting question, because, to me, wisdom, when I think of wise people, I think of people with a lot of experience, that have lived a life, right? Sometimes we'll say, oh, that young person is wise beyond their years, and so you've got people that really are deep thinkers at an early age. For me, wisdom is all about sharing experience and a life well lived, right? I think wisdom is the culmination of your life's journey. What were some of the experiences that shaped your life, that shaped who you are and the community that you serve? You and I are both great fans of Marshall Goldsmith, right? Yes. And whenever I talk to Marshall, his life experience and the way that he is able to share what he's learned, to me, that's wisdom, right? It's not just knowing a lot of stuff, it's sharing that experience. How do you take that knowledge and that wisdom and share it with the people around you? And no one does it better than Marshall. And I will tell you that the reason that I said yes to your email is because Marshall taught me that when people ask for help, or they ask you to endorse a book, or they ask you for your opinion, there's only one answer, and the answer is always yes. Wow. Now, I wasn't always that way. I think a lot of people think that wisdom is acquiring a lot of knowledge and keeping it to yourself for your advantage, right? I know stuff you don't know, and that gives me the upper hand, right? I think true wisdom is gaining a lot of great knowledge and then making sure that you share it with people that need it and ask for it. So, I was so touched that you thanked me for responding to your email. I'm thinking you should thank Marshall, because he's the one that taught me to say yes to all those things. Isn't that interesting, how wisdom cascades, wisdom ripples. Wow. And it was from Marshall to me to you.
Yeah. And just because of that kind gesture that you did to us, it's really hard for my wife and I to ever say no to anyone that asks us for help. And this one also. And, so every time that someone asks us for help, and even if we are busy with something, we're trying to delay to saying yes at a later time, but we're always trying to do it as much as we could do. And Vivian always told me it's all because of Chester. And
well, and see, that's how wisdom gets transferred, right?
Yeah.
It's from person to person to person, those acts of kindness. I am such a fan of random acts of kindness. It costs you nothing to be kind. It costs you nothing to hold the door or help somebody with their packages, or give them a kind word or a pat on the back. It was interesting. Just last night, my wife and I were at the grocery store, and we were buying various and sundry things, for the next few days. And the woman at the checkout was just delightful. And often, jobs like that, they're hourly jobs, and they kind of survive the day, get the paycheck, go home. She was so engaging. She was so friendly and so lovely that we have a tradition in our family. Let's see if I can find one that makes sense here. We have these little gratitude stones that I carry with me. And she was so wonderful. I said, hey, I've got a little gift for you. It's a good luck gratitude stone. And she goes, oh, really, for me? And I said, yeah, it's a stone because a stone in the pond makes the water ripple. Just like your wonderful smile and your wonderful positivity. So I hope it brings you good luck. And she goes, oh my gosh, I will carry this with me everywhere. And I thought, I buy these by the hundreds, by the way. And, they cost $1 or whatever. It took 20 seconds to have that conversation, and to then see her smile and put that stone on her register, and to know that she'll carry it with her. Why not? Why wouldn't you? And wow. I love just little random acts of kindness. And my wife said, well, you made her day. And I said, I know my wife knows this. I set a goal to uplift a stranger every day. So if somebody I come across, can I do something kind for them? Can I give them a kind word? Can I give them a little gratitude stone? And you know this because you do this. Not only does it make their day happy, it makes your day happy. I mean, you always feel good. When you say yes to those people, you and your wife, of course it lifts them up. It also lifts you up, doesn't it? I mean, you feel great about being of service and helping somebody.
I think for all of us, one of the most important things to do is to identify what life is about. What is our meaning? What is our purpose? And I've written a short piece on this, and I'll send you the link on LinkedIn when I post it. But I talk about, for all of us, it is about finding purpose and meaning. For each of us, that will be different. But ultimately, every philosophy, every creed, every religion has at its core a true value for human relationships. Life is about loving and being loved. And I think that that's a very important part of our reasons for living. And I think another part is to do whatever we do with purpose, to identify our purpose, how we can impact positively on others, because I don't believe it's having things that makes people truly happy. I think it's doing things. So if we are committed to live the best life that we can live and to saying, how do I make the best of this? Well, then I think that will start to happen.
So that question is, if I can travel time with you to when you stay with your brother at your grandparents' home, okay, you, me, seeing your little self there, and you're gonna tell that little Mora about the future works, the journey that she is going to have, and if there's one piece of advice that you are going to give to that little Mora, what is that one piece that you're gonna share with her?
Well, heck, you're going to make me cry. The advice is, it's going to be all right. And that question reminded me of a day when I was writing The Future-Proof Workplace, and I was on my way to meet Dr. Linda Sharkey, my co-author. And before I'd left, Matthew, my middle son, had a conversation with me where he was worried about messing it up. And I said, what? And he goes, life. And I remember sitting there at the airport, and so, you know, I'm in my 40s probably at this point. Yeah, it must have been mid to late 40s, so not fresh out the box little girl living at my grandparents' house. But I remember sitting there thinking, oh my God, can I really write this book? Dr. Linda Sharkey, she's a big deal. She ran leadership development with Jack Welch at Crotonville. And then I got to the day with Linda as we outlined the book, and there she is, she's 20 years ahead of me in her career, and at the end of the day she goes, do you think it'll be any good? So that's why going back to the little me and saying it's going to be all right, you can't mess this up, is so important, because we're all carrying the what ifs. And much like you said, the leaders who are saying, what if I'd written my book? You know what, write your book. Do it. Half do it, but do it. Because we've got nothing to lose other than, you know what, I don't want to write another book, or I don't want to finish the book. Great, you started. I don't want to move to America. What if I move and it goes wrong? I had the adventure. Take the risk. You get one life. Live it all in, all on. And I'm still learning to do it. But that's the advice I wish I'd known sooner. Take more informed risk, go faster, be bolder, seize the moment. That's the advice for that little girl who's trying to colour within the lines.
Wow. Beautiful. And then what did your mom talk to you when she figured out that you could have a beautiful life as an independent public philosopher and can really make more money than a professor in teaching?
Yeah, she was very surprised by it. I mean, she was very proud that I was at a famous university like Yale for graduate school and Carolina for undergraduate. She was very proud that I taught at a famous place like Notre Dame. But then when every business she had ever heard of, IBM, paid me to come and speak to thousands of people. Every other company that, the grocery store where she would go shopping, the food she would buy, those companies had hired me as a philosopher. She was amazed that in answer to her question of who is ever going to pay you for this, she was amazed the answer was almost everybody.
But for the 2 years of relentlessly working and giving speeches for without any like money coming back to the family,
yeah,
it must be a lot of challenges financially also, for you. And now there's a lot of people that working on their dreams and facing such similar challenges like that, financially issues, to maintain a normal operation at home. So Tom, back then, what did you talk to yourself every day?
Yeah. I said, I'm learning, I'm growing. And I did have my teaching job. I didn't leave Notre Dame until my income from speaking was double my teaching income. And so I thought, okay, now I can make a transition. Also, when I left, I didn't just jump off the cliff. I didn't just jump off the side of a mountain. I said, could I have a leave of absence for 1 year so that if this works, I'll stay in North Carolina, but if it doesn't work, I'll come back to Notre Dame. And they said, okay, you can have a leave of absence for 1 year. And in fact, they paid half my teaching salary. They gave me for that leave of absence. And I was also making income from the speaking. So that gave me a period of trial. So I tell people, don't be crazy. Don't leave what you know in a way that's foolish. Be wise about transitions. You use the word proper adventure. A proper adventure is a wise adventure. Don't leap into the dark where you don't know where you're going, but make sure you prepare a path as you go. So I was giving these talks for free at the same time I was teaching. So we did have the small teaching income, never paid, philosophy professors are never paid much, but that was enough for my family to get by on while I was learning this new area of how I could be of service to people. And I've come to believe there are 4 stages of life. And there are 4 main human activities. Each one of these activities defines one of the stages, but all 4 activities go on in each stage. For example, let's say our first 25 years. Let's divide 100. Let's imagine living 100 years and divide it into 4 25-year periods. The first 25 years, the main activity is learning. You're learning about the world. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about other people. You're studying in school. That activity is very important for the first 25 years. It's probably the dominant activity. The next 25 years, the dominant activity is building. You're building a family, you're building a career, maybe you're building a business, you're building your structures, friendships, relationships that will serve the world the rest of your life. So you've done your main focus of learning. You're still learning while you're building, yes, but building has become your main activity, and learning is a secondary activity serving the building. Then from age 50 to 75, I think serving should be the main activity. So you're also learning, you're also probably building, but mainly you're trying to be of service to others. That's your main focus. And then in the 4th stage, from the age 75 to the age 100, you're guiding. You're sharing wisdom with others that you've accumulated throughout your life. Now, hopefully you're also learning, you're also still building, you're also still serving, but you're serving by way of guiding mainly. That is the premier of the activities. Now, I think young people learn best when they also try to build, serve, and guide those of their peers and younger children. And so I think each of the stages of life is enriched by all 4 activities. but there's one that rises to the top in each of these 4 stages: learning, building, serving, and guiding. And that's how I've come to see my life. I'm 72 years old now, so I am still in the serving stage. Now, I'm always learning. I'm building in the sense of creating new books, creating new ways of being of service to people, whether through executive coaching or through using virtual tools like we are today. I'm always building new things, but I'm mainly doing so to be of service. Now, I try to guide people now. I've always tried to be a guide to people who are not as far along the path as I am, but I can imagine that in a few years and for the rest of my life, guidance may be the main thing I do. I won't be building as much. Hopefully I'm still learning. I will be doing some building and still will be doing some serving in other ways, but guidance will be the premier thing. So that map of 4 stages is represented in different ways by different religious traditions, by different wisdom traditions in different parts of the world. And if I can help people to understand that, they will understand that they don't always have to be doing the same thing in the same way. But at different stages of our lives, we have different emphases, and those will change. And when we adapt to that change, we can feel fulfillment and happiness in our role in the world and in our communities.
What have you been doing to help you to have that clarity in life?
For me, one of the best activities I ever undertook was shortly after reading Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I took one step that has impacted my life ever since, and that was in his chapter, Begin with the End in Mind. He talked about writing a personal mission statement. He said, companies have mission statements, they're North Star to guide them, but most people never have anything like that. They just live paycheck to paycheck or vacation to vacation. So I sat down, and that was more than 30 years ago, and I wrote the personal mission statement. And then I would have it pop up on a task every day, Monday through Friday at work, one section of it to read. Now, every morning, as soon as I get up and I go downstairs, I have it on an app that I can listen to. And I think that just listening to it or reading it almost every single day for more than 30 years, it just seeps into your soul. And for me, the opening statement is that when I die, my goal is I want to hear God say, well done. Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And I don't do that in I'm working my way to heaven or I'm earning anything. No, I just want to be pleasing to God like I would want to be pleasing to my wife or to my daughter. I don't have to earn anything from any of them, and I don't have to earn anything from God. But in gratitude to how he's changed my life, I want to be pleasing to him. So that opening statement, and then I go in and I talk about my faith, family, personal well-being, career, but that is like my North Star.
Bring me back to that morning 30 years ago when you wrote that personal statement, because that's very important for people to be able to have their own personal statement also in their lives, right, Brian? Help us to share back, what did you do on that morning for you to come up with that personal statement yourself?
You're testing my memory. 30 years ago, I don't know that I remember the exact things, but I do know this, that my wife and I, we were going through marital issues. Everybody, if you stay together long enough, you're going to have issues that you're dealing with. And we were dealing with some really significant issues. And so reading that book, I was trying to, get some stability, I guess. And as I read that, about the mission statement, it made sense. And I was convicted that, I was one of those people, kind of living day to day, trying to be a good person, trying to do, right things. but didn't have something that I was working toward. And so I thought, you know, if I can come close to being the person that I lay out here, that will not only benefit me, it will benefit my wife and our relationship. And then eventually our daughter came along, and it's had benefit for her as well. So I think that's really what the catalyst was, you know, there were just some hard issues going on, and I felt like this could probably help me in dealing with those.
When we talk about journey to best self, we talk about being open-minded. We talk about no one can be their best self by themselves. It takes others to help them to do that. All of that, which is science-based now and is huge in our country, was you know, I had the opportunity to play small parts in building something like that. So that's, you know, it's long-winded, but, you know, that's, and I'm still on the journey. I'm still on the journey. And I've been just very fortunate. But that journey, when I went to the business world, for some reason, I got to meet some amazing chief executive officers who did the same thing the coach said. I want you to work, you know, of course I was still in the business school or the law firm. I want you to basically work with me on some things. And, you know, and so I, you know, had 4 or 5, you know, world-class, very big companies having the CEO says, let's work together and figure out how to do some of this stuff. And it was all about how do we emotionally engage our employees. All those big coaches were very adamant about that. The people who work for me are people who I have to help them become their best self and be a happy person and be a good person and be a, you know, good worker, but a good family person, et cetera, et cetera. So I've had this conglomeration, and it's really, it's mind-boggling. And I'm sure people will be listening to it and saying, this is so weird. Yeah, it is so weird. But it goes to show that if we come to the table in a certain way, there will be lots of opportunities. And we do have control over what we bring to the table. So if you think about it, and there's other things I could have said, okay? I mean, I went to law school and got accepted into one of the top 5 law schools in the country, and I never took the law boards or never did a formal application. I got on the phone and talked to the dean, and we had a 45-minute talk, and he told me, I'll see you in September, right? And so it's this ability to bring together, if you will, you know, happiness is one word, wisdom's another word, human excellence is another word. I was just a hard worker, but there was something in me. There was a reason I lived. Because as all the doctors said, you're the only baby this small that's lived this way.
Wow.
All the babies that were that small when I was growing up died. And so, you know, that's the story. But the story is, and I'm just so grateful to all those people. I mean, the founder of Southwest Airlines was a client of mine. You know, as an example, biggest, which was for a while the biggest and best, the founder of the Ritz-Carlton Corporation, all right, was one of the people that I worked with. I mean, people like that, and all of them, if you will, were, quote, spiritually oriented in the sense that, okay, not necessarily, you know, being one church is better than another church, but it's like, how do we help people become their best selves?
Yeah.
being open to being wrong, knowing that you're not always, you're very rarely right. And that keeps the curiosity and being motivated to find out whether you're right or wrong. That's the curiosity. And I think wisdom comes from that constant curiosity to learn and to grow and to keep your brain plastic as it can be, because what the developmental neuroscience shows is the brain becomes less plastic with age, but it doesn't become completely inflexible, and that's something that one can control, and by putting oneself in new situations to get out of those, what we call a canalization in developmental neuroscience. Like, you're in a rut, basically. How do you get out of the rut? Well, being open to the idea, number one, that maybe you don't know. Maybe you can learn something from somebody completely outside of your normal sphere of influence, and being curious to do that, right?
So I define wisdom as not something above us, but within us. So many people think they don't have a skill set to be wise. They're not super well educated. They're not great in math or philosophy or science or physics. Wisdom comes from here, within. And it is understanding who we are, understanding our place in the universe, and understanding, this is irrespective of your religion, whatever your faith may be, but I am convinced that we are all connected. We are connected. What you want for your family in Vietnam, what someone in the Middle East wants for his or her family, what someone in Canada wants for his or her family, what I have wanted for my family, I guarantee you it's the same thing. You want your family to be happy. You want your family to be safe. You want your family to be loved. You want them to be successful in whatever endeavors they come up with. That's the human spirit. Wisdom is learning from our mistakes, not judging ourselves too harshly because we make mistakes, because we're human. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to sin. We are going to do things we shouldn't do. But we can learn from that. We can, through wisdom, say, I'm going to be better. I'm going to improve. I'm going to help others. And my belief is that if you, me, anyone wants enduring happiness, when we think about what makes us happy, it will always, always, always involve others, never alone. If you are truly happy, it might be happy with your spouse. It might be happy with your mom and dad. It might be happy with your best friend. It might be happy with your children. But it's sharing lives. It's sharing something. It's sharing what we know. It's sharing our wisdom. It's sharing our love. It's creating that happiness. So for me, wisdom is something that is in us that we just have to uncover. We have to unbury it sometime. We all have it in us, irrespective of what our education may be.
So John, how can we unearth it within ourselves? What can we do?
I think what we do is that we remain open. We don't have closed minds. We aren't judgmental. We are accepting. We are thoughtful. We are kind. I know a lot of this sounds very idealistic, but it's something that I 100% believe in. I believe that if we give ourselves the chance to be the people we're supposed to be, that we don't worry about everything, we don't stress about everything, we don't judge everything, including other people, and we treat ourselves and others with respect, then I do believe the goodness within, the strength within, the wisdom that is within, it will come forth. It will come out of its burial place.
How have you been growing your ability to think so beautifully like this?
That's a good question. I think one of the, I think it's an ongoing challenge. It's presents itself in different ways in the different roles that I've done, but it's always, if we think about the quadrants of important and non-important, urgent and non-urgent, and ideally we would be spending our times only on the important things. But so often we are confronted with something that is appearing as urgent, but it's not that critical, deep, important work. And so it's always a balance of that tension, and it's always coming back to that. How can I reset, and how do I kind of triage my work so that I am giving tending and care to that non-urgent and important work? And of course, urgent, important always gets prioritized. But when something isn't a phone call or an email in the inbox or something else that's presenting, maybe it's a conversation from a member of the community who grabs me in the grocery store and wants to share their feelings about some direction or decision the city has made. It's important to listen. Everyone wants to be seen and heard, and we endeavor to honor that at all times. But also, how do we do the most good for the most people? And that is always going back to, am I being intentional about doing what's most important? And it's a constant rebalancing and management of that. So, you know, and part of that is participating in conversations like this. It's listening to the TED Talks. It's being on that continuous learning journey to understand how are other people doing this work too, right? I love listening to podcasts. It's how I end every day is listening to podcasts, both from strategic thinkers in the world, people that help me make sense of the news, but also just other change makers and people doing good things all around the world. I think we're living in such a lucky time where we have this share of information and strategies for so many people to do good.
Beautiful.
And I realized what I loved to do was talking to the landlord coming to me every day. We talked about life, we talked about things, and I learned every time to speak more fluent, and that has energy. But you're right. How do you create opportunities? Because you cannot force destiny, but you can create opportunity. And literally, I think that's a big part of what you can take out of this situation, of this story. If you're in this type of, you know, when you lose your job, when you move to a new town and you don't know what to do, you can think yourself into a rat hole very quickly. Oh, how about this? How about that? You scribble. I mean, I love to scribble, but most of the time after the book is full, I just throw it away because it's rubbish. But don't think yourself into a situation, but act yourself into a situation by making connections. The number one fountain of opportunities is not your brain, is not what's in your head. That's my takeaway. The number one fountain of opportunities is you engaging with other people. A thought in isolation is useless. A thought in a relationship is worth a gold, or could be worth a gold. Like, how did I get the job? I mean, I didn't get the job by someone scouting for a lost husband man, a household man, somewhere in this wonderful city of Malang. But it was me being out there, talking to people, connecting. The magic is in a relationship. The same. So it was also, I mean,
Yes.
Can you imagine that one day I was under a shower and saying, Holger, I've got a fantastic idea. You should write a New York Times bestseller. Oh yeah, I love the idea. No, that's not how the universe works. That's not how the universe works. You serve, you have an idea, you put your head on the table, take a risk, do stupid things like sending a package with penguin masks to the world-renowned professor of leadership. That's how, in the end, I co-created a New York Times bestseller.
Wisdom to me is knowing that you don't know, right?
Mm.
Understanding that you don't know everything. And wisdom comes from listening to other people, listening to what they really say, and being in tune with who they are. And wisdom comes from your life experiences, you know. But you don't have to experience everything to know. You don't have to have somebody have somebody tell you don't touch the stove if you can see the stove is hot, you know. But wisdom comes from learning to listen to people when they say, Howard, the stove might be hot, be careful. And so wisdom is living a life full of curiosity, willing to learn, willing to grow, and understanding that you don't have all the answers.
How can I know myself? What practice can I do to make it happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. I'll share the long term and then some easy things. So the long term is obviously like take a lot of assessments. Personality assessments, work style assessments, career style assessments. I have taken so many assessments to learn about myself, right? You know, go to therapy, go to coaching, just ask feedback from other people in your life. You know, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think are my greatest strengths? What do you think I'm most challenged by? You know, you can ask a lot of people in your life that same question to gather some data, right? Pay attention when people do give you feedback, including really positive feedback that you dismiss. So if somebody says, wow, you're so good at that, and you're like, it's easy, it's no big deal, that's when you should pay attention, because you are not realizing that there's something special about you that other people see in you that comes so easily and so naturally
that it's part of your core. And that is where you should pay attention as much as when they tell you something they don't like about you. Or, so that's a long-term, like, self-development. I do have one tool. I'm putting it in my book, but it's also free and available on my website. It's called the yes-no grid. And I'll just describe how to do it. So you don't actually have to go to the website, but if you're interested, it's on my website under free resources at gotowerscope.com. What I did for myself is I had maybe 3 or 4 years ago realized that I had overcommitted to all of these things that was not bringing me any happiness. And I was regretting every time. You know, I was 3 months in, 4 months in, regretting taking on these seemingly wonderful opportunities. And I'm thinking, now I've overloaded myself with things that make me unhappy. And now it's even harder to extract myself. So this is not a good pattern for me. See if I can do something different. So I started tracking. It's like a 2x2 grid. Yes, no, right? And did I say yes to this? Or did I say no to this? And was I happy about the decision afterwards? Or what did I regret the decision afterwards? And I just started like writing notes for myself on my whiteboard, which is like right up here next to me, so that it was in front of me every time somebody invited me to do something. So I could always look back and remind myself what I did. And I started tracking, when you have these 3 set of circumstances, every time those 3 things are there, and you said yes, you regretted it. So now every time somebody's in front of you and they offer and you ask a bunch of questions and it meets those 3, you better say no, Mira, because you weren't happy before, so you better say no. And what it also helped me do is say no more easily, because I had a reason for it. It's so much easier to say, you know, thank you so much for offering this. What I have learned over time, as I've reflected, is that these kind of opportunities that have this or this or this actually don't make me feel good after I say yes. And I don't want to commit to something and then regret it. And then you feel badly that, you know, I actually need to remove myself after I made that commitment. It would be bad for me. It would be bad for you, you know. And so they completely understood what I was talking about, but I had examples and a great way to explain to people why I was making the decision. So that helped me gain a lot of wisdom about myself, just tracking my decision making and where it was coming from.
What is that called? Yes, no, what?
The yes, no grid, because it's like a 2x2
yes, no grid. So it's on your website.
Yeah, you just go under free resources, and it's one of the things that you can download to try it out for yourself.
So there's probably 2 pieces to reflection time, because it is insanely important. It's something that I practice probably daily, but definitely weekly. And it's something I encourage everybody to do, because you have to take a moment and lift your head from everything happening and think about what you've learned and what you want to do. So the first piece is logistical. I spend time every single week looking at my calendar and making sure that I have time for reflection. So I am more of an introvert that does my best thinking when I have the time to internalize it and have quiet time to restore my energy. So I will often have a day that is back to back to back of client meetings and coaching conversations where I don't have time in between, because I know I'm not going to get anything done and I'm not going to have reflection. But I then know, okay, where can I fit in a little bit of time that next morning, or where do I have dedicated time on a Friday to think back through these things and what I want to do different. So it is a constant planning for chunks of time and moments to be able to process and think what comes of it. And for me, it's also how do I then bring my best to my clients and what I want them to need or what I want them to be able to do, because a lot of times you don't know it in the moment until you've had that time to reflect, and then the aha comes. This second piece is it's usually when I'm walking. It is usually those morning walks when I am telling myself, look for that moment of awe. I'm not even intentionally giving myself a list of things to reflect about. It just pops in. And in that, something emerges that is what was needed. And I keep my phone with me so I can drop a note and follow up on it later. But I find both the logistical piece of it and then making sure that I'm able to do that reflection is key.
So, Professor Kurt, how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Well, that is a difficult question. That is a very difficult question. I never thought about this. So, I think there are two things we have to differentiate. We have two systems in our brain. One is thinking deliberately, so conscious thought, and the other system is unconscious thought. We could also call it intuition. And I very much believe in intuition. Rely on your gut feelings. Because intuition is not a magical sixth sense. It's a very rapid, unconscious pattern recognition that comes with an emotion. So if you have enough experience in a field, very often you have an intuition which tells you this is what you should decide or what you should do, and you cannot really explain why. It's just a gut feeling. But this gut feeling is based on a lot of experience you have in a field. So many decisions I make are based on gut feeling, are based on intuition. And I learned to trust my intuition. But one important thing, rely only on your intuition if you have enough experience in this field. Because if you don't have enough experience, your mind is not able to recognize these patterns.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's travel time one more time, okay? And I want to bring you to your high school. And that is when you were on so much on sport and your grade started to drop and your mom was worried, okay? And if you now travel to talk to your mom back then, so the Kurt now talk to your mom back then and say about your journey in the future to your mom, what would be the thing that you're going to tell her?
Well, back then, when I was not so good at school and she was worried, I never failed a class. Sometimes I was very close. But I was kind of very efficient because I invested just enough to pass. So I was never really at risk. So I think that I kind of knew what I had to do, and I invested just enough time to pass every class, and I decided to invest the rest of the time in sports or other activities I considered important. And so I would, in hindsight, I think, and this is one of my greatest mottos or discoveries, is if you can dream it, you can do it. If you find the passion for something,
you will become good at it. And you know, I just needed some time to find out what my passion is. It was not at high school, it was later at the university.
So that's what you're gonna tell your mom?
That's what I would tell her, yes.
And what would she say to you?
Well, you know, she when she was worried, she did let me know, but she also gave me the freedom to pursue my interests, and I think she tolerated it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Professor Kurt, the last question is a word of wisdom that you can think of, you want to give to our audience to close the conversation. So if you can think of, you know, require your life and your experience, the people you meet, the challenge you got through, and, you know, all of the achievements you've been having, and then you just want to tell something to our audience about living, about working, about experiences, what would, you know, you tell our audience?
Well, another motto of mine, and I really believe in it and try to practice in almost everything I do, is always try to combine what is useful for you with what is pleasant for others, or the other way around. Try to combine what is pleasant for you with what is useful for others. That makes you first very efficient, because you pursue two things at the same time. You pursue your self-interest, and you combine your self-interest with the interest of other people. And I think that is a secret of success. I have done it with cycling. I combine the passion for cycling with charity. I also do it, for example, when I train on my indoor bike. I have to train 2 to 3 hours per day, a lot on my indoor bike at home. And when I train on my indoor bike, I do my reading work for my job. So I combine training with working. So try to combine in everything you do what is pleasant for you with what is useful for others.
How have you been growing your ability to think?
Oh, that's a big question. I think, I mean, I have good colleagues whom I'm working with. And of course, I haven't been a very good pupil when I was young, but because at that time it was not so important how good you are at school, because you could just access university anyway. Now the situation has been really changed a lot. So, but at that time also already when I was young schoolboy, I was quite interested in the subject philosophy. And we had a very good teacher. I think that was the main thing, that we had a teacher who has been able to make this very abstract subject area attractive to other people, or to us as young students. So, and I think I had several possibilities during the last 10, 15 years to work together with people who were had a quite a philosophical understanding of grasping things. And I think it has probably been a combination of my being interested in philosophy and having the chance to relate to people and work with people. So I have been working with a colleague of mine who is an expert in Søren Kierkegaard. Søren Kierkegaard is probably, after Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote all these fairy tales. I don't know whether you know him. He is actually very popular in Japan, I've heard. So he has written a lot of fairy tales. And Søren Kierkegaard, he is an existential philosopher. And we now talk about Søren Kierkegaard, who has lived, who was born more than 200 years ago in Denmark, as being the first third-generation coach in the world. Because what he was actually talking about was that you need another human being to develop. You cannot do it by yourself.
I knew that I was in this for the long haul. So I knew that it was going to be a long journey. So I sort of had my mind made up that, you know, I'm just going to focus on a day at a time, a week at a time, month at a time, and not worry about 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead. And then the final thing is I took inspiration from one of my hobbies. One of my hobbies is road cycling, riding a bike, you know, cycling. And when you're cycling and you're climbing a hill, right, it is so easy to think about just stopping. I'm just going to stop. But you remember a couple of things. You think, well, the top of the hill might just be right around that next turn. I just need to make it around the next turn because that might be the top of the hill, and then I'll be done. And so I didn't want to stop right before that final turn. You know, when times got tough, I was like, well, maybe next month, you know, I'll be through this challenge, or I'll be at the top of the hill, so to speak. The other thing in cycling is, us cyclists, we have a saying, what goes up must come down. So eventually you'll get to the top of the hill, and then you'll get to enjoy the downhill on the other side, you know, where you just get to coast and relax and go super fast down the hill. And so I sort of always had that in my mind, that I don't want to miss the downhill. Once I climb this mountain and get up to the top, I really want to enjoy coasting down the other side. So that sort of helped me keep going as well. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. How have you been growing your ability to think and expand it?
Well, thank you for thinking that I think. We'll just start with that. I think for me, and this is just for me, curiosity has been one of the best, best attributes that I've found that I can develop in my life. Not just taking at face value what's presented to me. How did you come to that conclusion? What's the evidence that actually supports what you're saying here? And in today's politically charged environment where you've got fake news going, I mean, you got all this stuff that whatever people are trumpeting out there. Where's the validation? Critical thinking. I think critical thinking, it's not taught in schools anymore. It used to be taught, in my experience. I mean, certainly when I was going to school, I had to actually show my work, if you will. Yeah. How'd you come up with that answer? Show your work. So there was evidence based questions that were part of my my upbringing. I mean, starting with my parents. How did you come to that conclusion? You're upset about something. Why do you think that's what it is? And that would stop me. I was going, well, because it's not an answer. What's the evidence you're using to support your upset? Oh, I don't have any. I'm just upset. Okay, well then let's back up the truck and start all over again. So the idea of critical thinking, just being curious. What's the source? And this goes. I think honestly, it goes hand in hand with emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, and this idea of awareness. What's the source of my emotional experience today? What's the source of this behavior that I feel compelled to do? What's the source of it? I mean, just that question, what's the source of this? It gives me pause. Viktor Frankl,
yes,
talked about between stimulus and reaction, there's a space. In that space, if you curate it well, you can make a different choice. In that space, you have to think before you behave, before you act. In that space, think. And then you'll know what to do next.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if people can have that space for a little longer, for them to think, you see how beautiful the world would be, right? Would become, yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I promised my wife to ask the last question. It's going to be a bizarre question, because it's not related to this conversation at all. But if you had a chance to travel time and to meet you at the age of 18, all right? And you have a message to talk to your own self at 18 years old. Okay. So what would this 75 years old Blaine talk to the 18 years old Blaine? What message?
Take more risks.
Take more risks.
Yeah, take more risks. Yeah, take action faster. Those two things. Take action faster and take more risks.
So I think, there's becoming wise and then there's acting wise. Right? And so how do you become wiser? Right? I mean, none of us are so wise, right? But how do we become as wise, continuously wiser? And I was thinking about, well, where does my wisdom come from? And it really comes from a couple of places. One, it comes from your own experiences. But here's the thing, experience doesn't just necessarily make you wise. I know a number of very old people who are not necessarily wise, right? Mm-hmm. But it is what you learn from those experiences. If you make a mistake, do you pull back and say, okay, A, what can I learn from this? But also, how do I make this right? And so I think that's one piece, so really learning from your experiences. Having a breadth of experiences. One of the reasons I believe I am a little bit more wiser than I used to be at work is because I didn't just stay in my lane in HR. Right? I went and led a sales team. I led a customer service organization. Right? I started my own company. I worked with companies around the world. Every time I have an experience that feels a little bit scary, that's different, that gives you that broader perspective. So putting yourself in a position to have a wide range of experiences. Between David and I, we have 3 children, and one of the things that we're both very committed to doing is giving them a range of experiences. So, for example, when we went to the Philippines last year for a couple of weeks on a similar tour as we're heading into Vietnam, we took Sebastian out of high school and took him with us, so that he could go into these communities, he could go into the orphanages, he could work with, he was the intern in our big HR conferences. He could meet people who were different than him. And I could just see his eyes getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, when he showed up at college for his freshman year, people were using the words like, you're wise for your years. Well, part of that is because he's had a breadth of experiences and he's had the opportunity to reflect on this. And that's a privilege. Not everybody can do that, of course. But every one of us has a choice of, do we do things that stretch us? Can we help us to be in conversation with people who are very different than us? So I think learning from your mistakes, giving yourself exposure to a variety of experiences is really important. And then that's learning for yourself. And then there's the learning from others. And that is really digging into the research that other people have done, digging into the philosophical wisdom of people who spend a lot of time thinking about wisdom and what makes people wise, and pondering on that, reflecting on it, and then learning from others about how you're showing up in the world. So learning from others through 360-degree feedback, asking people for how did I show up in that meeting? What was the impact on you? Those kinds of tactical things can help you become a little bit more wiser.
How have you been growing your ability to think?
Oh goodness! So, I was mentioning health and fitness. I did some yoga this morning, and I like doing yoga. This particular teacher I watch on YouTube, he's always coming up with philosophies of life, and today it was about harmony and nature, and the poses that we were doing made me think a little bit differently as I'm going through my breathing and my discomfort. I read a lot, like this book here, The War of Art. Stephen Pressfield, I don't know if you're familiar with this book. It's about resistance and things that hold you back. I built a relationship with Stephen Pressfield. He's an amazing author. And I had lunch with him in Arizona. As a matter of fact, I could probably say, I could show a photo of me and Steve here. Actually, and Waldo, he's from California. And let me share with you here. Oh, here we are. Just want to show it to you here. So here's Stephen Pressfield, right there, right? Yep. Yes. So you see him on the screen. And so he's the author of this book. He's an amazing, amazing author. But I was introduced to him through my friend Victoria Labam, another Hall of Fame speaker who's friends with him, and I have a great relationship with her, and she wound up connecting me with Stephen Pressfield. The way you think differently is being exposed to different people, to different books, to different disciplines, yoga, transcendental meditation. I watch different shows. I get coaching from different types of speaker coaches who are very, very different from me. And so, we may have a palette of colors in our lives, 5 or 10 palettes or tools for that matter on solving problems. When you read a book, watch a podcast, build a new relationship, gain perspective from somebody in another culture like you in Vietnam, now you're exposing yourselves to different tools, different colors, and it allows you to solve more problems with tools and create more palettes or more canvases of beauty with all these different colors. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love meeting people. That's why I love traveling, because once again, we were complete strangers before this phone call, but now we have a relationship, and you're going to share things with me about life and growth. Hopefully I could share with you, and that's how we grow, and that's how in my life I've learned to think differently. But the bottom line is this, and every one of you watching this or listening to this, there's no better teacher than ourselves. There's no better teacher than going through the grit and gristle of life to learn when we're getting shot at, overcoming our fears and anxieties, and thinking differently and asking for our maker, our creator, to give us hope and guidance as well, whatever you believe in. The biggest tool and teacher of life is ourselves. And so listen to your heart, and listen to your pains, and and the gifts of life. Listen to what's going on inside, and many times those answers and perspectives will come to you from the universe, and it may even show up with a new friend on a Zoom call.
Wow. Wow.
I think sometimes people talk about wisdom in the same context as intellect or logic, and I think they're very close because they're both sort of cognitive processes, right? I mean, intellect is about acquiring knowledge, right, and learning things, and we've both been around people that have a lot of intellectual firepower, like really, really smart. And at the same time, I think there's a distinction with wisdom. Wisdom is a longer game. And I think that wisdom is also about the application of knowledge and of experiences and of situations. So, yeah, and that's what I would say on that. And somebody said to me, it's funny that somebody said to me the other day that wisdom is avoiding thoughts that make you or the people around you small, you know. So, and that just kind of stuck with me, you know. And I think that part of maturing with age, at least for me, I was very hard on myself. I came from a very performance-driven family, which had its positive things, but that can also be quite hard if you're always putting yourself under a very critical analysis. And I think one of the things I've learned as I've grown and aged is that to be more gentle with myself and gentle with those around us. And I think that fosters a more trustful, constructive environment. So I think wisdom is also about, there's a gentleness to wisdom. Wisdom is not something that we force onto people. You can't force wisdom onto people. Wisdom is, for me, is a little bit like ownership. And that's one of my big themes in my work, is helping leadership teams and organizations take more ownership to what they do. But you can't force ownership on people. People have to say, I feel safe here. I feel valued here. It makes sense. I'm going to do more than's expected of me. I'm going to carry through with that customer request, even though it's 7 o'clock on Friday night. So you choose to do that. And I think wisdom, I think about the people that I think have wisdom. My father-in-law, for example, my wife's father, he's 85 years old. He's a cardiologist, retired now, of course, but he's a very wise man. And he'll just share situations with me, not only about medical situations, but financial situations and life situations. I know his life hasn't always been easy, but he's a doctor. He's been running hospitals, but he has a lot of experience that he just shares it, but he doesn't force it on me. And I've also been really blessed that most of my bosses, as I look back at my life, most of my bosses, I think, possessed a lot of wisdom. And the characteristic there was not, they weren't telling me what to do, but they were always available for me when I had a question, like, what do you think about this? Or I'm in a tough spot here, or I think I've done something with a customer I shouldn't have done here. And I just noticed that those people were gentle in their sharing of experiences without telling me what to do. So I think wisdom is sort of a gentle intellect, if you will, wrapped in emotional intelligence, perhaps.
Wow.
So you know how the technical skill requirements will always keep changing.
Yeah.
You know, today we talk about AI, ML, ChatGPT. Before we spoke about, the Industrial Revolution. There's always something that's happening all the time. You know, digitization is now a big topic. Efficiency is a big topic. Talent is a big topic. But my feeling is this is always something that will always keep coming, new things, and you will keep learning. But what will not change is your soft skill requirement. Ability to lead teams, ability to work in teams, communication skill, networking skill, negotiation skill. All these will always remain. It will not change. So anyone wanting to grow and succeed in their career should focus on soft skill development.
Okay.
You know, and that is not something commonly found. People struggle today, you know, not having good soft skills.
So, for you, as a top leader in an organization, right? I'm curious to know what kind of soft skills are Shasta working on in 2025 to sharpen his skills and continue to become a sharp leader and leading the teams to success?
I'm working on developing the ability to look through details and find common analysis. So more analytical skills, I would say, you know, that I'm working on right now.
Okay.
So when I was a little girl, very young, up until primary school, so when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, my family would come up to Cape Cod in our country, which is a part of Massachusetts that sticks out into the water. There's lots of beaches, water, the ocean. My grandparents, my maternal, my mother's side grandparents lived here on Cape Cod, sort of where I live now. And I had been born and raised in Maryland, but when I retired, I finally did retire up here to Cape Cod because of those childhood memories with my grandfather. So my granddad had a rowboat, and he would take me out when I was a little girl. My grandma would make us sandwiches, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and my granddad would row the boat out into the bay, not the ocean, but a bay about a mile or two long, like the one I live on now. And he would teach me how to row. And for anybody who's rowed when they're young, you get into a rowboat, you have an oar in each hand. And when you're really little, first of all, the oars are heavy. Second of all, one oar always hits the water before the other, and then your boat goes the wrong way, and you just like wonder, am I ever going to get this little rowboat to go in a straight line? Because there's so many things that I'm just, you know, I can't do this. And so my granddad would show me how to balance the oars and how to get my timing down and be patient. And he was very calm, cool, and collected. So he was a wise man. My granddad was a really wise man, which is interesting to say because he didn't have global travel experience or anything, but he was older, and I really think there's something to do with wisdom that you just don't have as a young person. There is wisdom, it takes time, over a lifetime. So my granddad was a wise man in his own way. And wisdom isn't something you can just put in a jar and sell. My granddad had his own form of wisdom, and that was knowing how to teach a young girl, how to pass it on to a young girl to help her have an experience on the water where I could eventually dominate those oars and I could row. And then once we rowed out into the middle of the bay, we could eat our sandwich. I could dive down and swim and find clams and have a great time. And it was all because I learned how to row out into the water and to do something hard and get there and then have the experience, the fun of being there. But yeah, my granddad taught me that. He taught me the perseverance, that there's a reward once you learn something. He taught me to love the water because otherwise I wouldn't have had a connection with the water and wouldn't have thought about the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy. And that little experience as a girl that my grandfather gave me set the course for my entire life. So what I would say is, for anybody out there who's watching right now, there's somebody in your life who's younger than you, who's more inexperienced than you, who's less capable than you, that you can guide and mentor and pass on your wisdom. You might not have a whole lot of wisdom, but you have got more than they do in different ways. So I would challenge people to find a way to pass on something to somebody else who needs it, either at work or at home, a young little girl like me or an older person that needs some encouragement. So there's all kinds of ways you can pass your wisdom along, and you never know what kind of an impact it's going to make. And my granddad taking me out on the ocean, on the water when I was young, set the course for my entire rest of my life. And he would never know that he had made that impact on me, because he ended up dying before I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy. So he never knew the impact he made. And so that's another thing about this delayed gratification. A lot of the things you do today, you're not going to ever see the benefits from, but you have to look inward and do what's right, do the right thing, and understand that a lot of what you're doing is planting seeds for the future. And that's what it's all about, is giving back the wisdom. And it doesn't mean you have to reap benefits from it. You need to learn to be selfless, and that's where that self-reflection comes in, like time in the pool, the time I've spent on sailboats, reflecting back on who I am. And then at this older age of life, that's why I wrote the book, is to give back the leadership lessons and maybe some of the wisdom that I garnered during this 40 years serving in uniform.
Gandhi once said, be the person you want to see in the world, right? And we're born with an already established personality. We have who we have. Our temperament is already ingrained. And as we get older, we become witness to various stimuli around us that will affect in the world, that will affect the way we act and react to that stimulus, okay? And if you're around a certain type of thought process, good or bad, right? People around you that you love and trust, you're going to mirror them, at least for a while, until your personality basically comes in. Now, I have always been, as far as I can tell, a really nice person who likes to help people. I can remember helping little kids when I was a little kid, you know. And some of the people that I've worked with along the way became really nice people. Because when it really gets down to it, the people that I've worked with, that I'm in it for me and that's it. I don't care about you. They have a very miserable life, no matter this amount of success. But when they change that idea to the more I help the people around me, the better I feel, the better my life is, and the more successful I actually become. Because there's going to be a point in time where you're going to get so high where it's going to affect your job and you're going to start getting fired all the time. Yeah. Right? Or worse yet, you're going to make those around you so miserable and all of them quit all the time and you have nobody to work with.
Yeah.
So it's important. Be kind.
Be kind.
It's free.
So the question is, how have you been growing your ability to think?
By trying to think about things differently. By reminding myself that I'm shaped by my experience, so the way I think about things may not be the way other people think about things. The way I think I've shaped that is to expose myself to other parts of the world, other cultures, and try to imagine why people believe as they do, or how they're shaped by experiences that I haven't had. But I think when you hike partway across Kenya, or you're in a Muslim country, whether it's in Asia or in the Middle East, and you're stopping for prayer breaks that aren't part of your way of teaching, or you are listening to people in your class, 62 people from 31 different countries, speaking, they're all speaking English, but I know, and when we go into breaks or whatever, they're not speaking English, they're speaking the languages they're comfortable in. And listening to people talk about how their experience isn't the same as my experience, it shapes your thinking, makes you stop in your tracks. Now, when I'm human, so when I'm in a hurry, or when I'm stressed, or when I'm flustered, when I'm not at my best, certainly I revert to blinkered, I love the British notion of blinkered thinking, my way of thinking, my way of doing things. When I'm at my best, and I'm hoping this conversation has been somewhat, I'm at my best, I'm thinking about how the other, remember Martin Buber wrote a book called I Am Thou. I'm thinking about how the other might perceive, or how the other might be influenced, or how the other might have had an experience I haven't had. You yourself have experiences in a country that basically, except for flying through once, I know nothing about. And so you have a set of experiences that I can learn from, but I have no experience of it. So I can only expand my thinking. I have an opportunity by saying, so tell me about it. So what was it like when you grew up? What happened with your parents? What did they experience? All those kinds of things that I have no experience of.
Yeah, I guess when what was coming from me, very interesting, I was thinking that we also should be careful of not overthinking, and we have to take action as well. So there is a balance between thinking and also sometimes have the courage to do things. Because, and you know that probably, and I definitely know that, right, from cognitive behavioral therapy, what we think determines how we feel, our emotions and feelings, and that determines actually how we act and how we behave. So, and sometimes I see that people who only think a lot, that they don't get into action because they get stuck into those limiting beliefs they have. So I actually often say, when it's very difficult to break that pattern of limiting beliefs, act. Because when we act, we actually shape new beliefs, because we collect actually proof for a belief which was actually not serving us. For example, if somebody is very afraid to ask a question, right? That happens a lot to us, right? In a room, right? At work, because they feel like they're junior and they don't have a good question to ask, and they're very afraid what people think of them. So they overthink a lot and they think they are not good enough, right? So you can break that pattern, right? Try to break that pattern and break that limiting belief. But sometimes it's so deep in them, it doesn't really work. So what you can do in the same time is just for the person to take the courage and be brave and just ask a question. Not think, but act. And by acting, you will find out that, hey, it is not so scary to ask a question. Actually, my colleague also wanted to ask the question, but actually didn't dare to. And then by acting and taking these small steps, by acting, you actually change the belief that you are not valuable enough, that you're not good enough. And then, and then you have then you actually created a new belief for yourself, right? So that was actually the first thing which was coming up for me when you ask about thinking. I was thinking, be careful, don't overthink. That was the first reaction. But I think if I go back to thinking and expanding, I think it's really about different perspectives. Again, going back to learning from different people, different cultures, or reading a book, or anything which can give you different ideas. Because then, if you have more ideas, you will come up with different solutions, right? If we have only talking to 3 people, then it's very limited in terms of perspectives, right? But if we are open to more perspectives, I think it will help us to find a better solution in the end. But I think what is always difficult is that it's very easy, like, to talk to you when we have the same values, right? And we have to, and it feels familiar. It doesn't feel scary, right? But if people are very different from you, then it's very difficult to actually not judge and bring curiosity and really listen. Because sometimes we feel maybe like threatened, and then we don't open up. Or sometimes we think that this is a stupid opinion. I totally don't agree with it. But then you also close down, right? And I think also there, and that's why I really like our Covestro value, actually, Vivian, curiosity. If we can bring in curiosity everywhere, then it really lowers the judgment. And that really can help us also to work with people we don't feel so comfortable with, right? And that's very normal that we don't feel comfortable with everybody. But the people who are most different from us are actually the ones we can learn probably the most from, because they have something we don't have, probably, right? And that's always a very interesting area, I think, to explore. Like if a person is giving me discomfort, probably because this person is very different from me, right? Different values, a very different background. And instead of, not engaging, is bringing in curiosity to do engage. And then you actually found out we're all humans, and we're still actually similar needs. But the starting point and the stories of the others are so different that sometimes, because of the different stories, their behavior is very different. So instead of judging the behavior and understanding the stories behind, I think is very helpful to expand our thinking. Going back to your question, expand the possibilities actually we may have. So. Wow. Is that okay? So it's maybe different than you expected, but it sparked something else when you were asking that question. And I think that's the beauty of interaction, right? Because nothing, for sure, you probably prepared your questions a little bit, but every person you talk to probably is very different, and other things are coming up, and also for me. I was very curious and excited, and I loved our conversation. And I truly hope that it maybe can inspire or give some ideas, and maybe even just different perspectives, right? People don't need to agree with or even do what I do. Definitely not, because we're all different persons. And I also think that we should not copy other people, but we should find our way, right? Our process, our values. And I think that's an easy thing. So I, as a coach, right, we never give advice, because we are not that person. But what we do as a coach is actually giving the opportunity to find out the different perspectives, and for them to choose what is the best for them in that moment, right? So therefore I also try to do that, just give perspectives, and hopefully that it resonates and people pick their own nuggets out of our conversation, right?
You may take it as me turning it on its head, but it is listening to younger people, because they see things differently, and they see things differently for a reason. And I think that sometimes the older generations don't pay enough attention to why it's seen differently, and seeing the world differently. How can we move forward faster? How can we move forward with more grace, perhaps? And then, to your point, never, ever, ever dismiss the wisdom of our seniors. You laugh, but I remember my grandpa and grandma, I told you, on the farm. To this day, I know what herbs to use for healing certain things. Just because they told me. They don't teach you that at school, right? And that's, and it's not just the wisdom of curing something when you're in a field. It's the wisdom of appreciating and respecting the wisdom of our elders.
Wow.
And I think that's very important.
Beautiful. Why are we trying to complicate things when we can simplify things?
Ego.
Ego.
People's ego gets in the way. You know, I often say that you're in trouble when your ego eats your empathy instead of your empathy eating your ego. And I think that's really important that we think about that. And then I think awareness, you know, I think I don't know if I've shared it with you before, but I have a little notepad here that I carry around, and on the front of my notepad here, I have a little sticker, and it says, "Am I being the person I want to be right now?" And then it says, "So who is that person?" And I have a list of the person I want to be, and I have to keep reminding myself of this, because the world will try and make us something that we're not. So my list says, who is that person? It says, I want to be grateful. I want to be caring. I want to be empathetic and reasonable. I want to be a listener. I want to be fact-based. I want to have a balanced opinion. I want to be very curious. I want to be a learner. There's where the connection comes to wisdom. And I want to throw sunshine, not a shadow. And I've had that little list on my notebook for I don't know how many years. And there would not be a day goes by that I don't look at that, probably several times, because we have to remind ourselves that who do we want to be our best person, without the world dragging us off into a place we don't want to be, because the world will do that.
What have you been doing to help you to have that clarity in life?
For me, one of the best activities I ever undertook was shortly after reading Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I took one step that has impacted my life ever since, and that was in his chapter, Begin with the End in Mind. He talked about writing a personal mission statement. He said, you know, companies have mission statements, they're North Star to guide them, but most people never have anything like that. They just live paycheck to paycheck or vacation to vacation. So I sat down, and that was more than 30 years ago, and I wrote the personal mission statement. And then I would have it pop up on a task every day, Monday through Friday at work, one section of it to read. Now, every morning, as soon as I get up, and I go downstairs, I have it on an app that I can listen to. And I think that just listening to it or reading it almost every single day for more than 30 years, it just seeps into your soul. And for me, the opening statement is that when I die, my goal is I want to hear God say, well done. Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And I don't do that in I'm working my way to heaven or I'm earning anything. No, I just want to be pleasing to God like I would want to be pleasing to my wife or to my daughter. I don't have to earn anything from any of them, and I don't have to earn anything from God. But in gratitude to how he's changed my life, I want to be pleasing to him. So that opening statement, and then I go in and I talk about my faith, family, personal well-being, career, but that is like my North Star.
Bring you back to that morning 30 years ago when you wrote that personal statement, because that's very important for people to be able to have their own personal statement also in their lives, right, Brian? Help us to share back, what did you do on that morning for you to come up with that personal statement yourself?
You're testing my memory. 30 years ago, I don't know that I remember the exact things, but I do know this, that my wife and I, we were going through marital issues. Everybody, if you stay together long enough, you're going to have issues that you're dealing with. And we were dealing with some really significant issues. And so reading that book, I was trying to, get some stability, I guess. And as I read that, about the mission statement, it made sense. And I was convicted that, I was one of those people, kind of living day to day, trying to be a good person, trying to do, right things, but didn't have something that I was working toward. And so I thought, if I can come close to being the person that I lay out here, that will not only benefit me, it will benefit my wife and our relationship. And then eventually our daughter came along and it's had benefit for her as well. So I think that's really what the catalyst was, there were just some hard issues going on. And I felt like this could probably help me in dealing with those.
Okay, so assuming that we're gonna travel time and travel space also to another universe where you and I, me now, be able to see your your mom's father and your father's mother. So with the four of us together, all right? Yeah. And Michelle gonna share one piece of wisdom that Michelle's been having back to your grandparents. All right, so what is that piece of wisdom you are going to and proudly saying to them?
Oh gosh, that's a great one. I'm going to share something that is applicable in life and career, and it is something that I share with my career transition clients, but this is so applicable in life in general, which is, this is not your forever place ever. Like if you're experiencing a challenge or you're experiencing a struggle, that struggle is an event. That struggle doesn't last our whole lives. So whether the struggle is losing a job, maybe having a problem with the house and not sure if you can keep your house, or, maybe the falling apart of a relationship, or any of those kind of things, like this is not your forever place. Like things will turn around and things will evolve and they will grow and they will become better from here. It can feel very stressful in the moment, but it's not going to be how it always will be. So I think that's something that I've learned. I have learned that through life, with different situations and different challenges. And that would be one thing that I would share. I've seen it help so much, and I've seen the truth of it so much too.
Wow. And I hope that this message, that piece of wisdom, will reach to many, many people during this challenging time in their lives, right? So that it can give them hope and it can give them the courage to continue to face with setbacks and challenges. So on their journey, they'll be able to find peace and joy. So
Thomas, over the years, how have you been sharpening and expanding your ability to think that you can share with us so that we can learn from the expert like you?
Well, I mean, I think the the first thing is that learning and thinking to me belong together, right? So for me, I think one of the people who think more deeply and think better are people who are learners, you know. So you could be spending 6 hours on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and watching, you know, people fall in puddles or cats that jump from trees. I mean, that's fine. You could do that. Or you could be reading a book. You could be reading a story. You could be learning about how nature works, how humans work, right? So for me, learning to think is learning, first of all. I think the second thing about thinking that I really believe in is focus. And by the way, I'm struggling with that. So it's a lifelong learning experience. What's important to me, the most important good that helps us think is time. And for me, the question is, on your schedule, where's your thinking time? You know, just look at your schedule. Tell me when you're thinking. You know, so for me, focusing on that in a deliberate fashion is important. One way for me to think is to write. Like, write down a thought. Another way to think is to teach, right? If I can explain it to you, I know I've understood it. Frankly, not before. It's really hard to be sure that you understood a problem if you've not taught it to others. But the focus is the mental state. Of course, there's practitioners who teach you how to do that, you know, from your side of the world, right? You know, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation techniques, right? Calming your mind is a good thing. My version of that is I go outdoors a lot. I go run. I move my body. Thinking also means to be in a healthy body, right? So for me, that's the other thing that really matters. But really giving your time the focus, that your mind the focus that it takes. There's a final point that matters, and it's mattering differently for different people. I think well with other people. So some of my best ideas happen in the presence of other people. Not everybody is the same. There are people that need to be for 24 hours by themselves, then they have the best ideas. Or they have understanding. Again, I need my alone time too, but if it comes to thinking of new ideas, often it has to do with interaction of trusted individuals other than me. Also people who think differently than me. So that's another element of it. I mean, so those are kind of the pieces. I just, kind of the rule that I really always say, kind of whether it's about thinking or about other things, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what's important to you. So kind of if you say my goal is to do X and Y, your calendar does not show that. It's not important to you. You just talk about it. And so if your goal is to improve your thinking and your knowledge, show it when you do that in your life. It takes time to get better. Don't care what it is. Whether you want to get better in sports, whether you want to get better in science, thinking, get better learning about other people, it needs to be time that you spend. Time is the most precious good for everything.
Wow.
We talk to the great leaders and great people like you, and we ask the question like, how have you been helping yourself to expand thinking?
For me, I've always, as I mentioned earlier, it's through people. People help me expand my thinking. And by the way, and so does AI. I just treat AI like a person. And so I ask it questions and I have conversations with it. You know, I can have an hour-long conversation with AI about a topic that I learned from. And I will also do that with a person. I recently was at this camp, and I met the gentleman who was the co-founder of Instagram. And I just, you know, got into a deep conversation with him about a number of things, and I learned so much. So to me, my opportunity for learning and thinking is through people and AI now.
Wow. Wow.
But you got to be curious. You've got to ask good questions.
Wow.
Well, this is where the neuroscience comes in really handy, because I have learned the different areas of my brain that I can use in better ways through the neuroscience. For example, I now know that if I take on too much and if there's too much stimulation, the stress curve and the impact on my goal direction, empathy, clarity, memory, all the executive functions from the prefrontal cortex, the more I take on, the more the capabilities will be impaired. So I have learned to stay in this zone of stimulation and stress to not go over the curve where it becomes so much that I can't think clearly anymore. So the neuroscience has really helped me understand my thinking and where it gets to be a challenge and why. And I think that is the incredible benefit of learning how the brain works, because it is we suddenly begin to understand why we do the things we do, and why some of the things work and why some of the things don't work, because it is related to neuroscience.
Wow. Wow.
And so, you know, so I've learned to not overstimulate myself so that I don't lose, you know, my executive function capabilities. But I've also learned that, you know, I can't keep everything in here. And so, you know, there's another sort of researcher, her name is Annie Murphy Paul. If you get a chance to get her book, The Extended Mind. The Extended Mind, Annie Murphy Paul.
Okay.
It's a very, very good book that helps us understand that in modern times, our brain can't keep that stuff in here anymore. We've just way overextended our capabilities to think clearly. And so the extended mind is the philosophy that we need to offload what's in here into other areas. And so having a to-do list, a vision board, a whiteboard where you can move things around, things that become visual, help us offload what's in here in terms of thoughts.
Wow.
And frees up space. So I have learned to offload, so that I only keep in here what I need in this moment.
Wow. And that will happen.
So that I don't get distracted about the next thing. And it's like, that's offloaded already. The next thing is offloaded. It's already in a file. It's on my calendar. It's on my to-do list, on a sticky note. It's in a reminder. So that's already handled. So my brain doesn't have to hold that now in here while I'm talking to you.
Wow. Thank you so much.
So that book is mind-blowing. It's fabulous. It's extremely well written. Lots of stories, and not sort of so scientific that, you know, she'll lose the reader, but I can highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Annie Murphy Paul, right? And the book
Annie Murphy Paul.
And the
yes.
book, The Extended Mind.
The Extended Mind.
I will
yes.
definitely look forward to that book, and I also look forward to contact her and send and send your message to her. You were the one who introduced me to
Yes,
her
you
work.
can tell her that you can tell her there's a fan club out there in the coaching world that she might not be aware of, and we love her work and her research, and we use it all the time in coaching. So if you get to talk to her, you can say there's a big group of people out there that love your work.
How have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Ooh, that's a cool question. I think what I'm trying to do more now is to expose myself to ideas I don't like. And I noticed over the last, 10 years, we're humans. We're very vulnerable to confirmation bias. We like things that tell us we're right and we're smart and that confirm that we were telling ourselves the right story. And it's a huge bias. It's a big problem that erodes the quality of our thinking. So I'm working very hard to try and expose myself to ideas that I disagree with, to listen to podcasts of people who I disagree with and sit in it and ask myself, okay, but what is true about what they're saying? And I find it physically uncomfortable to do it, but I know it's making my thinking better, more robust, stronger. And it's wonderful when I find there's a podcast, the Ezra Klein podcast, and I find it's the best source for me of listening to people. He's very careful to curate guests who he just wrote a book, and to his credit, just had 2 people on his podcast to talk about all the things they don't like about his book and all the arguments they disagree with. What a courageous thinker to publish a book, and within a month of publishing a book, bring on people to tell your whole audience why you're wrong. So I'm really attracted to people who think like that, and I'm trying to be more like that, although it's baby steps for me because I find it very, very uncomfortable, but I'm working on it.
Wow.
I think for me, it is about staying curious and continuing to seek out new ideas, new information. And that has been by reading, that has been through podcasts, YouTube. There's so many incredible sources now where when I first moved to Zambia, I thought, I'm in this tiny little country in the middle of Africa. I have access to nothing. That's not true anymore. I have access to the whole world because of the internet and shows like yours and so on. I think for me, it's curiosity, and it's a curiosity about who I am as well, and wanting to delve deeper and peel off more layers of that onion, and then of course use that information to help others. So to continue to help myself think, it's about being curious, about questioning things and learning more, broadening my own perspective, realizing that if I only know this, I'm in my little box here. The more I know, the more I expose myself, the wider my perception can be.
Beautiful. So teach us your way of expanding your ability to think so that we can share back to our audience, please.
People
social creatures, and that's important. We evolved from sitting around campfires after hunting all day and trying to survive all day. But we talked. When we sat around those campfires, we talked. And we told each other of what our experiences of the day were. We shared with each other the good hunting grounds, the good gathering grounds, where the dangers were. That is still true today. When we sit around a meal, or we sit around in a circle and we talk to each other, and we share our experiences, we're learning. We're learning from each other. Sometimes it's about learning what I don't like. If I don't know where I want to be, it's about learning where I don't want to be. If I don't know what I want to do, it's about learning what I don't want to do. There's the key, I think, to improving the way I think is listening to other people. It's about learning.
Beautiful.
Just simple learning.
Thank you very much.